All right, so we are in Ecclesiastes, and we are in chapter 2, and Pastor Josh got to start us in there last time. As you're turning there, I was thinking back, because I like to do that, and I was thinking of a conversation many years ago with Nathan, my son, and he was looking around his room. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm looking for a car. I said, what's it look like? He said, I'll show you when I find it. Well, in a way, that's what Solomon's doing, isn't it? He could just ask God the answer to all of this stuff. He could just go to God who made everything, can give him the fulfillment, the peace, the joy, everything that he desires. But he's scurrying about trying all this other stuff, And when he finds it, he'll let God know what it looks like. I think that's kind of what's going on a little bit in Ecclesiastes as we go through this. Tonight's message is a woeful end for wisdom and work. Most of Ecclesiastes is an exposure of life outside of God's ways. That's what we've seen. So you don't go through and you read it just like any other book, or you're going to get some messed up theology, okay? But if you understand what it's about, it's a marvelous book, and one that I wish every atheist, agnostic, and anybody else would read. And so, a really neat book about this whole thing going on in Ecclesiastes. The late R.C. Sproul writes, the history of philosophy and theoretical thought lies in a continuum. At one end, we have full-body theism, the belief in one God. He is supreme, sovereign, over all. And at the other end is nihilism, belief in nothingness. Nihilism argues there's no God. And from that premise, nihilism concludes, there is no meaning, significance, or sense to human existence. Now, I would argue to you, if you want to say there is no God, that is your only other alternative. Anything else you stick in between is just a fairy tale. If there is no God, indeed, there is no meaning, purpose, significance, any of that stuff, morality to the human life. We are nothing more than the smartest animals, and that's it. But there is a God. That's the good thing. Okay, and Sproul continues, the tension between theism and nihilism is not new. It was an issue in antiquity as seen in the wisdom literature of the Old Testament. These opposing worldviews are juxtaposed clearly in the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, I would add to Sproul, I'm sure he's in heaven now, but he would agree with me that that Solomon isn't assuming atheism, but he doesn't view things from a heavenly perspective. He is viewing them as under the sun. That's what he's doing. And look at that last line. If you go back to that whole thing, look at that last line that he had there. This thing of there is no meaning, significance, or sense to human existence. That type thing is exactly what Solomon is trying to find in all these different areas. Whether it be work, some kind of philosophy, pleasure, whatever it may be, the things he's built, the achievements he's had, all these different things he is looking for, meaning, significance, and sense to human existence, and he is finding vanity, all is vanity. So, but he continues to make this mistake of looking under the sun. And what this means, once again, is the idea that he is simply looking on a horizontal level. He's not necessarily denying there's a God, but he's not turning to God. And thus, he's simply eyeing things in this way, and he's taking all of these different roads. And before we go and just leave it and say, okay, so this is what happens if somebody does that, it's important that we notice a couple of things as Christians, and I trust most people in here are Christians today, but that we notice too. We can actually do this a little bit in our own life. Now, I know it'd be easy for us to shy away from that, but we have to admit there's times in our lives, and maybe right now happening, that in different areas that we are not looking to God. But we are going by our own thinking and the world's thinking. And in relationships, the way you do your work, the way you use your money, whatever it may be, just think, have you prayed about it? What does the Bible say about it? If you haven't had those questions, you may be doing things under the sun. And so we can do that in our lives, but also as Christians, we can look and really gain a look at the fulfillment, the brilliance that is there, the peace, the security that's in our Christianity when we look at it compared to what Solomon is seeing here. And I think that's another really cool thing. So tonight, the woeful end for wisdom and work. And the first thing is that the wise ends like the fool. The wise ends like the fool. And verse 12 of chapter 2, he says, I turned myself. So he's looking at something. He's taking a new glance here, okay? He's taking a new glance. I turned myself to behold wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do that cometh after the king? Even that which hath already been done. The wisdom here is contrasted with folly, and I believe that this is a different kind of wisdom, just slightly, than what we looked at before, because it's not a foolish wisdom necessarily. He's really finding some kind of wisdom that he can actually, compare, contrast to folly. And so this, I would say to you, includes even a practical wisdom that you might find in Proverbs. Now, not all of Proverbs, and definitely not one that looks to God a lot, but there is a lot of practical wisdom in Proverbs. There is. So there's that kind of thing. And with that, I would like to say that there's some ways that we can come about and see this, and even an atheist might have this kind of wisdom in a way. It comes from two kinds of revelation that we get. As God reveals truth to us in two ways, there's general revelation and there's special revelation. General revelation is, it's the type stuff that if you go to school, you are engaged in some general revelation. See, all truth is God's truth. It all comes from Him. All right, whether you're studying math, whether you're studying science, that's true science, whether you're studying any of that stuff, that's really God's stuff. In fact, the atheist scientist that argues against God is nonetheless working with God's stuff. That's what he's doing, because it's all God's stuff. God made it, okay? And so when kids go to school and learn, they learn about God's stuff. They may not realize that. And what you can do with this stuff is you can actually learn a limited amount about God. And we won't stay too much on that, but that's true. Romans chapter 1 talks about that, so much so that God says, if you don't believe in me, you have no excuse. He says it's that evidence, just from what you see. It's that evidence. But with this, I wanted to look a little bit also at Romans 2:14 through 15, because there's a bit of wisdom that even an atheist or someone like that might have. He says, for when the Gentiles, which have not the law, the scripture, do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the mean, while accusing or else excusing one another. In other words, Paul said, hey, look, even people that don't read the Bible know there's a right and wrong. They know that. So everybody's got this in. They may deny it, and they may not do it themselves, but you steal their wallet. Will they say, oh, it's okay, everything's fair play? They will not. They will say, that's wrong. That's what they'll say. I mean, if you say something mean to them, they will say, that's wrong. They may break the rules, but when you do it to them, oh, they're ready to show you the law, okay? And so the Bible says that that's even there, okay? But now beyond that, here's what Solomon is not accessing. All right, and there is a general revelation, but there's also special revelation. This is the depth of what we get that shows us the full perspective. Is special revelation. In 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17, all scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect or complete, thoroughly furnished into all good works. That is the great revelation right there that goes above everything else. Sure, you can partake of a little bit of general revelation and learn some things, but boy, that special revelation, I hope you're partaking of every day, because that shows you the big picture, all those truths that you won't get from just studying nature or something like that. All right, so those are two kind of revelations. Well, he said, and I think he's got a bit of this first general revelation, wisdom, in mind. Verse 13, he said, and he says it, he says, I saw that wisdom excelleth folly, as light excelleth darkness. Okay, and he says, verse 14, the wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. So this sounds a lot like a proverb in a way, and he's right. So this is definitely not just some kind of foolishness or whatever. This is a kind of a wisdom. Hey, you know what? You should live a wise. It's good to be a smart person and to listen to wise people and live right and all of that. And that's a good thing. Go read, some Aristotle and all of that. And that's a good thing to do. Okay, that's good. And be a wise guy. But look at what he says after this. He says, and I myself perceived also that one event happeneth to them all. Verse 16 lets us know what that event is, but you already know what that is. Death. Well, he notices this. He's like, man, you can gain all this knowledge. I can read. I can get wise people coming to me and say, this is the best thing to do. Don't do that. And I'll do those things. But in the end, everybody dies. Everybody dies. Then I said in my heart, as it happeneth to the fool, so it happeneth even to me. Why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, this is vanity. Now, of course, the fool may end his life earlier because he does foolish things. But nonetheless, the wise and the fool both die. And you have to understand, Solomon is looking at life under the sun. And in life under the sun, what's in this life is pretty much all that matters. So with that perspective, if the wise and the fool both die, what is the advantage to being wise? That's what he's saying. See, I get it. I get it, okay? The wise guy knows to look both ways. The fool, he just walks out and gets hit a lot. But the deal is, at the end of it, we both die. He may die sooner, but we both die. What is the advantage? In fact, there's an Italian proverb that says, when the game is over, speaking of chess, the king and the pawn go into the same box. The king's the most powerful, the pawn's the little guy, but you put them both away in the same box when they're done playing. And that's what happens to us too, isn't it? It doesn't matter whether you are stinking rich or you just, a penny that's about all you got. When you die, you both go to dirt. And so, yeah, that's the way it is. And he's looking at it this way. And it gets even worse, as in verse 16, he says, for there's no remembrance of the wise, more than the fool forever. Seeing that which is now in the days to come shall all be forgotten. How dieth the wise man as the fool? He says, look, even if you're wise, it won't be long for people forget you. They really do. And I think months before I talked about Ecclesiastes and a different thing apart from the series. I had people raise their hands and said, how many of you know something about your parents? Let's go ahead and do it. How many of you know something about your parents? That's good. That's a lot of people. I hope so. How many people know something about your grandparents? A lot of people. How many people know significant stuff about your great-grandparents? What about your great-great-grandparents? It's getting smaller. What about their parents? Very few. See, they're forgotten. Just a few generations, and they're forgotten. And Solomon is a smart enough man to see this. And they may have been super wise. I'm sure that a lot of them were super wise. We're not talking about anything they said. See, Solomon knows this. And see, he's coming to these, because he's a smart guy, he's able to go down these roads that you or I might be tempted to go down. He goes down them a lot faster and gets to the wall and realizes that's not how the maze is supposed to end. He's like, wow, this didn't go anywhere. Here's the good thing. I'm going to try to do this. I don't want to leave this just feeling all gloomy tonight, because here's the deal. That's not the way we have to think about things. Nuh-uh. I put the verse in that you reminded me of a few weeks ago. It is right here. Yeah, James 1:5. If any of you lack wisdom, speaking to Christians, and this is wisdom in hard times that you don't understand what to do. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. What's the significance of this verse? This is someone that says, I want to know what I'm supposed to do. And I mean what the right thing is for me to do in the situation. This is hard, and I don't know. I want to do the right thing. I want to do the eternal thing. God says, if you want that, you believe in me, I will give you that wisdom. I have that, and I will give you that wisdom. If you'll trust me, I'll tell you what to do. It doesn't mean you'll understand it all, but I'll tell you what to do. Because this is a mindset that we say, this life does not end when we go into the dirt. That's just our body going in the dirt, and it won't stay there forever. We have an eternal mindset. So I want to know, what is my action, God, that I should do to do things right that will fit into your plan correctly? And so you will do what your will is in me and use me for your will in other people's lives and for an eternal purpose. That's not the kind of thinking Solomon's got. That's a different kind of wisdom. That doesn't go away when you die. Because when you follow that wisdom, it has eternal implications. That's a lot different. Wiersbe said this: we live by promises, God's promises, and not by explanations. We know that our labor is not in vain in the Lord. What we do does not end when we die. If you live for the Lord, it keeps on going. You do your part, and God takes care of the rest. I'm just saying that. I'm thinking, I'm drinking this up like this is, I'm saying it, but the truth of it, man, this is such a better meal than what Solomon's serving up. That truth. And he was trying, and so many other people try these other roads, and it's not there. Luke 10:20, Jesus says this. He says, and his disciples were rejoicing because they just, had quite a great spiritual experience. And he says, notwithstanding in this rejoice not that the spirits are subject unto you, but rather rejoice in this. Remember how Solomon talked about not being remembered? But rather rejoice because your names are written in heaven. Isn't that awesome? Christians will never be forgotten. Number one, we never truly die. And our names are already in heaven. That's a cool thought, isn't it? Cool thought. So that's the answer to some of what he's talking about. Well, then he goes on. Number two, we learn that work can go to waste. Work can go to waste. He said, therefore I hated life. Now, this doesn't mean he's wanting to end it all. But a way to understand this is I was disgusted with life. I found these things out, and this is horrible. No, I don't want to die, but I don't get why. What's the purpose with this? Because the work that's wrought under the sun, there's that phrase, under the sun, is grievous unto me, for all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Yea, I hated all my labor which I had taken under the sun. There's under the sun again. Because I shall leave it unto the man that shall be after me. Here's another woe that he has. And Solomon is talking about someone that's a hard worker and has great achievements like Pastor Josh talked about in the last time. That all these things, crazy things, not a pool, pools. I mean, he made all these things. And yet he says, because I shall leave it to the man that shall come after me. And who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? Yet shall he have rule over all my labor wherein I have labored, wherein I have showed myself wise under the sun. This also is vanity. Well, let me get a taste of this before we talk about this a little more. You guys ever seen the KFC sign? If you haven't, just drive to Walmart. You can see it. It looks just like that right there. Some guy brought this up one time. Isn't it weird how big his head is compared to his body? You can't unsee that anymore. No, you're going to see that from now on. You can't. Here's the deal. Some guy got paid a lot of money to make that logo. That is not the thought he wants in your head. And now it is. Now it is. Yeah, I wasn't the first one. Don't get on to me. Somebody else brought that up. In a way, took what this guy had made, and now you're thinking about, why is his head so big? You're going to think about that when you go to Walmart next time. But anyway, just to taste it, let's go back to verse 18 and go through this. Yea, I hated all my labor. Now, it goes beyond, making the head of KFC here. But, see, it's just a, anyway. Yea, I hated all my labor, which I had taken under the sun. You got to understand, people in this way, especially, look, if we're a good people in America do what? They work. And they work hard. And many times they love to have things to show for it, especially if they have a business or something like that. Maybe they even have an inheritance to leave to their kids. Look, he's saying any of that stuff after you're gone, they can totally be a fool and it's gone. All that you worked for is gone. And Solomon says, I hated all my labor which I'd taken under the sun, because I should leave it unto the man that shall come after me. You know who he left it all to? Rehoboam. Yeah. And out of the 12 tribes, he lost 10 of them. What a mess. Yeah. Who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? Well, I can tell you biblically saying Rehoboam was a fool. Yet shall he have rule over all my labor. Why? Because he can't do a thing about it once you're dead. Wherein I have labored and where I have showed myself wiser than the sun. This is also vanity. Verse 20, therefore I went about to cause my heart to despair of all the labor which I took under the sun. It's as if he's walking and looking at all the things he's made. And he said, once I die, I have no idea what will happen to this great stuff. I have no idea. All my riches that I have here, I have no idea what's going to happen to them. Yeah. Verse 21. For there is a man whose labor is in wisdom. He's speaking kind of himself or someone else. And in knowledge and in equity. Yet to a man that hath not labored therein, shall he leave it for his portion. This also is vanity and a great evil. For what hath man of all his labor under the vexation of his heart, wherein he hath labored under the sun? All this hard work. For all his days are sorrows, his travail grief. Yea, his heart taketh not rest in this night. He could not rest thinking about this. This also is vanity. Well, I'm not going to leave you right there, and we're not meant to stay right there. One of the Bibles that I have is a Life Application Bible. It's a really good Bible. And it says about these verses, hard work done with proper motives is not wrong. We must work to survive, and more important, we are responsible for the physical and spiritual well-being of those under our care. But the fruit of the hard work done to glorify only yourself will be passed on to those who may lose or spoil it all. Such toil often leads to grief, while serving God leads to everlasting joy. See, we can do work, and we can do it all for ourselves. And when you do, you have to realize all you built when you're gone goes to whoever gets it. Or you can do things for God His way, and all you're doing is playing your part in His plan, and it's God's stuff anyway. You can't lose it because it's God's stuff. And you're simply stewarding it. That's it. So pretty awesome. Colossians 3, 1 and 2. I'm not going to, I know Pastor Josh is in Colossians, so I'm not going to try to steal too much thunder from this right here. But great verses. It says, if ye then been risen with Christ, seek those things which are above. That doesn't mean, okay, then don't work, just go to church all the time. Let's have church 7 days a week. That's not what that means. What it means is find God's will for your life and do it. Serve Him in the capacity that He wants you to serve. Let all your life fall into that way. That's what you should do. Things which are above, which Christ sits on the right hand of God. Set your affection, your passions, your goals on things above, not on things on the earth. What we're talking about is stewardship. This is a biblical concept of stewardship. Dr. David Jeremiah says, how important it is to keep God in the middle of our bank accounts, our possessions, our portfolios. Picture your hands out in front of you, cupped together, palms up. In your open hands are all the things he's entrusted to you. Money, cars, a home, furniture, everything. All of this is his gift. We are the stewards, and faithfulness is our charge or our orders. That means our hands must never close over the gifts, but remain open so that he may use them as required and then refill our hands. There's a study years ago, but it's not been too many years because Pastor Josh hasn't been here that long, that we did a study called Stewarding Life. It was a really cool study, subtitled One Lifetime, Limited Resources, Eternal Priorities. I think that's a really killer subtitle. And in that book, Paul Chappell says this: God has attached to your life a profound purpose that only you can live out. Stewarding life is not about learning to tap into inner reservoirs of creativity and effectively manage them with helpful systems. It's about studying God's principles for how he wants us to handle the resources he has given to us, and then applying those principles to wisely and diligently live out God's purposes in our lives. That's well put. He says this: when my children were young, it was fun to watch them when I withdrew money from an ATM. They had no concept of a bank account supplying my transaction. They believed the money came directly from the machine. The ATM in your life may be a job or business, maybe a savings account or investment, but the real source of these blessings is God himself. Yeah. Man, if we start looking at this way, we don't see the dreariness, the vanity, the emptiness, the hopelessness that Solomon is seeing. What we see is fitting into the purpose of God, being actually given things. You've been given things, I've been given things that God has personally placed in our account to steward for him. That's a really cool thought. Instead of, this is my stuff, let's see what I can do with it. It's a totally different thought. He also says, there is great security in recognizing God as the owner of all things. I can't lose anything that God owns. It's a pretty cool thought. It reminds us that our dependence is not our financial prowess or our opportunities for success. Even those with great riches have no guarantees of tomorrow. Our security is in God himself. Should ever national economy fail tomorrow, he will never fail. No wonder 1 Timothy 6:17 advises, charge them that are rich in this world that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who giveth us richly all things to enjoy. God made it all, God owns it all, and God entrusts it to our care to enjoy and steward for him. Randy Alcorn says he came to understand this and said, well, if God was the owner and I was the manager, which he knows it is, but he just come to this thought, I needed to adopt a steward's mentality toward the assets he had entrusted, not given to me. A steward manages assets for the owner's benefit. The steward carries no sense of entitlement to the assets he manages. It's his job to find out what the owner wants done with his assets and then carry out his will. See, if we're in that mindset, seeking God's will, God, you've given me these things, they're talents, Lord, like that. I think the Apostle Paul would be applauding that hymn that we just sang. I'm serious. Would you? Sometimes we sing some songs and stuff, but not necessarily here, but some other songs you'd have to look and be like, I'm not sure. I kind of like that, and I'm not sure. With Paul, I can get kind of, start sweating. I'm not sure, because that's like Mr. Theology there. But that song, he'd be going, yes, love it. Love it. I boast not anything. No. Why? How can I brag about stuff that's not mine? So what a cool thing to know it's God's stuff. He's entrusted to me. I just simply all I need to do is to seek his will and how to use it. That's a cool thing instead of saying, how can I build this? How can I do this? How can I be remembered? How fretful and stressful and how temporary. This way lasts forever. 1 Corinthians 4:2, moreover, it's required in stewards that a man be found faithful. Whatever he's given you, a lot, a little, whatever it is, be faithful in it. Be faithful in whatever that is. The famous missionary C.T. Studd wisely wrote, only one life will soon be passed. Only what's done for Christ will last. Notice that last part juxtaposed beside what Solomon said. Because what's done for Christ will last. It won't end. No, it won't. Matthew 25:21, as the Lord is coming to this part with the talents, that parable he tells. He comes to one of those that's done well, and his Lord said unto him, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Don't you want to hear that? Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Notice that's after death, by the way, unless the rapture occurs. But it's after death. It didn't end. After death, the things that you did not go away. If you've lived for the Lord, he says, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. That's it. See, there's more to come after death. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Number 3 is enjoy the everyday blessings. He says in verse 24, there is nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink and that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw that it was from the hand of God. And so these are blessings. These are everyday blessings. I like this thing that Derek Kidner says in his commentary on this. He says, in themselves, rightly used, the basic things of life are sweet and good. This is why I like doing this study. It's not just saying, oh, okay, here's another chapter on how not to do things. I get it, but there's more there. So in other words, I don't know. I'm just going to dabble because video games, bad? No, thou shalt not do video games. There's nothing in the Bible like that. All right. But they're simply supposed to be an enjoyment. If they become a lifestyle, they're wrong. Sports, I'm dabbling. I am a little bit separated from people right here. Sports, an enjoyment. A lifestyle and a passion that eats your life, wrong. That's what he's saying. Food, it's an enjoyment. Most of it in here, it's not just sustenance, it's an enjoyment. But too much? Yes, it's wrong. This is what he's talking about. In themselves, rightly used, the basic things of life are sweet and good. What spoils them is our hunger to get out of them more than they can give. See, that's part of what Solomon's doing here. A symptom of the longing which differentiates us from the beasts, but whose misdirection is the underlying theme of this book. See, it's not that Solomon is engaging in a ton of sins here as we go through Ecclesiastes. It's just he's trying to find life's fulfillment and joy out of them. And that's not what God gave them for. Is work a good thing? Yeah, actually, man did it before he sinned. But there are people that are workaholics, that even they shun their family, neglect their family in order to work and make the next dollar. That's wrong. But can work be fulfilling in a way? Certainly. Certainly. So there's things like that. Money, is all money evil? Yes, completely just throw away all your money. The Bible doesn't say that. But you're not supposed to let it own you. It's not to be the driving force in your life. He is. Can it be an enjoyment? Certainly. So gives real perspective, I think, to a lot of us to make sure that things stay in the this is entertaining box and not, wow, can I do this again? Those are two different boxes. Keep those in this box, and it's all right. Ecclesiastes 2:25, for who can eat, who else can hasten thereunto more than I? Verse 26, for God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy. God does this. But to the sinner, the one that doesn't follow God's ways, he giveth travail to gather and to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before God. This also is vanity and vexation of spirit. And I think he's mainly talking about that second part with that. A fellow that wrote a book on the book of Ecclesiastes, H.C. Leopold, many years ago, explains God's gifts are often conditioned by man's attitude. The good are here, the ones who are not habitual sinners. Nobody's perfect. To them, God grants wisdom and knowledge. But this is not the type that's described previously as vanity. For since joy is at once appended, the terms must apply to a wisdom and a knowledge which enable a man to derive joy from the things of life. He's using them properly. Wiersbe says, it is not enough to possess things. We must also possess the kind of character that enables us to use things wisely and enjoy them properly. That's what we're supposed to do. I think that's one of the perspectives that we as Christians can say, I don't know why we're going through this book. I'm not an atheist or agnostic or something like that. I mean, let's go to the New Testament or something. I mean, that's not that. I think in our daily lives, this is a check as we go through these different valleys and these different roads that Solomon takes to say, hey, am I doing that? Oh, no, I just do that sometimes. Do you really? To check and say, hey, does this thing have the place in my life that God would have it to be in my life? Or has it become a driving force in my life? Yeah. If you want to know what the answer to that, one of the ways to tell is, do you get angry when somebody tells you to stop doing it? That's a pretty good indicator there. Yeah, pretty good indicator. The only one that's okay for that to happen is God. You're doing too much God. Okay, well, that's not, no, that's, sorry, you're wrong on that one. Okay, yeah, you're not going to err on that one. But anything else, yeah. So I think this is just something to ponder as we look at even being smart and doing some wise things and that kind of thing is realizing without God, that's vanity. At work, it's a good thing. But make sure that what we're really doing is putting all this in God's plan. That's the idea. And with that, hey, all we're doing is obeying, and as Charles Stanley says, leaving the consequences up to him. And the greatest life is a life that's lived in God's will. That's the best life. Woeful end for wisdom and work.